Alright, so our final technical session brings together two accomplished leaders to explore how AI can strengthen collaboration, agility, and customer centric product development. Combining global transformation leadership with hands on agile coaching experience, they'll share practical ways organizations can build an AI powered agile ecosystem. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Natalia Kuzmina and Sandhya GI on the stage for next session. Come on, guys, let's give a huge round of applause for Natalia and Sandhya.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalia Kuzmina. I am a Global Head of Business Transformation at S&P Global Ratings, and I am joined today by my colleague Sandhya.
Thank you, Natalia. Hi all, I'm Sandhya Ganapavaram. I am an Associate Director in S&P Global Ratings. Glad to have you all today. Thank you.
You probably heard a lot about AI today. New tools, new capabilities, new possibilities. We would like to concentrate on something slightly different. Not just what AI can do, but what decisions can AI can help us better.
I'm sure you all would agree with me that organizations these days do not struggle to decide what to build. They can build. But the real struggle is to understand they have too many things to build. That's the real struggle, right? Too many options, too many ideas, too many competing priorities.
And that's what today's discussion is really about. How do we understand our customers better? How we can prioritize better? And how do we choose what to invest in based on the impact?
And as we progress through today's presentations, I really want all of you to think about your own organization and how you are making decisions today and how you can use intelligence to make better decisions.
So let's get started. So what we're trying to do is we're actually trying to move from predictive agility, which we historically had. Agility was
Will this effort translate into real impact? Well, because speed alone, it just isn't the advantage anymore. The real advantage is knowing what's actually going to matter before you build it. Now, most product decisions,
So the purpose of this presentation is actually how we're moving from the reactive agility, where we are responding to change faster, to proactive agility, to actually anticipating some of the changes that can impact our customers. So I know this is still not the slide that we're supposed to have, so we probably just go with the flow that we have. Yeah. Okay, so maybe we start, if we can just go with our deck, then it can help us with the flow.
Yeah, you can play. Okay.
search, personas, segmentation, all that good stuff. But customers don't stay still, do they? Their expectations evolve constantly, their behaviors shift, their entire context changes way faster than our planning cycles do. And yet inside organizations, our understanding often becomes fixed. It's documented, scaled, repeated, until eventually it quietly becomes outdated. So teams just keep executing, with increasing precision, by the way, on decreasingly relevant assumptions. And that right there, that's the stagnation trap. Not because the team slowed down, absolutely not, but because they literally lost alignment with reality. From the outside.
Okay, I'll connect the dots. I know there's a little lag there, but what we're trying to talk here is about how we know that organizations are so good at delivering things very faster these days, but then the major problem is about understanding what to deliver, where to focus the ideas on, right? So what about the stagnation trap that we were talking is all about that? Honestly, we are delivering so fast these days that we are delivering everything perfect. But then what is important is, are we delivering the right things on time?
So organizations are actually investing a lot in learning the customer itself. So there's a lot of data that already exists.
And most of these decisions are accelerated through AI. But what happens is customers are trying to interact with the product all new ways. So the fast that we are going in, the customers are evolving more faster.
So that is especially true today because our customer expectations are changing on a daily basis. Technology changes, markets changing, and even customer behavior is changing on a daily basis.
And that's the real risk because we are talking about a customer who no longer exists.
So that means that the historical understanding and the historical picture of our customer is not relevant anymore, right? It's not because it is wrong, but because reality moved on.
And one thing that gets to my mind is that, most of our product conversations are very, very hard because of everyone is busy.
So I think this is one of the most uncomfortable conversations for product leaders.
Because customer behaviors does not always move in the same way.
And with that being said, our roadmaps are full, our teams are continuously deliver something, but it actually does not provide that much value that we anticipate as.
And if you all can think about, organizations usually have a lot of information, right? Every day we get a lot of surveys, a lot of feedbacks. We have so many customer signals that a lot of our product team do capture.
So the real question is, if our customers are not changing, do we really create value?
Again, the point is the learning is happening here after the investment instead of before it.
And that is actually making the data fragmented. And the main problem is that that data is not available at the moment where we are actually making that decision.
Organizations look incredibly busy. There's always a backlog, right? Always a roadmap, always something being delivered. But when you take a step back, you often find that only a tiny portion of what actually gets built changes customer behavior. This is what we call the shipping without impact problem, and it happens when output literally becomes the goal, when success is measured just by delivery instead of actual adoption. At the same time, organizations are completely surrounded by data, feedback, usage signals, surveys, but it lives in fragments. It's everywhere. And because it's so fragmented, it rarely shapes decisions when it matters most, right before the work begins. So teams just end up learning way too late. So what if we...
And as we go through the presentation, I think this is a shift that I really like a lot because until now we're talking about a lot of problem statements, right? But here we move on to understand a different starting point because here we are going to talk about, we are not going to talk about what we need to build, but we are going to talk about what behaviors to change.
And that completely changes the whole conversation.
And people stop arguing about the features and they start talking about the outcomes.
Because this is where value is actually coming from. Not from the values, from the features itself, but what customers actually do differently because of them.
Yeah, and but again, features are definitely one possible objectives, but I think outcomes are the real objectives we are looking for. Teja.
Instead of asking, what should we build next, what if we ask, what behavior do we actually want to change? Because let's be real, features don't create value by themselves. Value happens when something changes for the customer, when they adopt differently, when they act differently, or achieve something totally new. And when that happens, the business outcomes naturally follow. So now our work isn't just defined by a list of features. It's defined by expected behavior and expected outcomes. And that completely changes what good looks like. Because now, success isn't delivery. Success is impact. Now,
so it's interesting when people hear AI nowadays, they always think about, or they often think about, creating more information.
But in reality, as we know, so much of data exists in all the organization, but all we are trying to do is figure out what to do with that data.
So the challenge anymore isn't collecting the data, it is more making sense of it.
We're trying to connect the data, understand the data, and then find the patterns with them.
I sometimes think about it as a puzzle. Every department has its pieces, and it's important to focus on the bigger picture.
And that's where AI becomes very powerful because we are not trying to replace the expertise, but we are trying to connect the expertise.
pause for a second. Think about all the signals your organization already generates, just coming together. Customer feedback, usage patterns, behavioral data. Not scattered across a dozen tools, but totally connected. Not static, but continuously evolving. This creates a brand new foundation, an intelligence layer. It's a system that transforms raw, messy signals into actually usable insight. We're not just talking about reports about the past here. We're talking about a live, breathing understanding of what's changing right now. And when that happens, decision-making begins to fundamentally shift. Because now teams are no longer operating on those static assumptions we talked about earlier. They're operating on dynamic reality.
In my understanding, what I see that product teams do not really get excited with ideas anymore because there are ideas everywhere. But what they get excited is with learnings, rather.
They're really making an assumption about customer behavior.
And every idea is really an assumption.
And once we start treating ideas this way, the conversations are becoming a lot more healthier.
And then we stop defending ideas on which idea is good, and instead we start focusing on testing the ideas more.
Ideas become features really quickly. But in high-performing systems, they take a totally different form. They become hypotheses. It's a crystal clear statement of exactly what behavior should change and what outcome should follow. And honestly, this does something incredibly powerful. It connects effort directly to intent. It forces clarity. It creates real accountability. And it completely transforms prioritization. Because now, instead of just comparing features on a list, teams are comparing expected impact. And that leads to way better decisions, long before the actual work even begins. So
for me, this is where things are getting really interesting because AI is shifting from being a productivity tool to being a decision support capability.
Historically, we all are used to using data to understand what happens in the past, but then as we move towards AI, it helps us to understand what happens next.
And that's a big shift.
Yeah. Let's just play the video for a change, and then let's an example that we wanted to show you, and then we'll connect about what we are talking about.
Actually look like in practice. Because sure, at this point, the idea makes total sense. But the real question is, how does it work inside an actual organization? Let's start with something super simple. Every single company already has the raw material. Customer signals are literally everywhere. They're in product usage, browsing behavior, transactions, in feedback, surveys, and conversations. But today, those signals just exist like tiny fragments. They're disconnected, scattered across a million different systems, just floating around without any structure. So they don't actually help you decide. They just kind of sit there. And this is the first major shift. You don't need more data. You just need to connect what you already have. Because when those signals are unified, something really important happens. They stop being noise, and they start becoming genuine understanding. Now, instead of isolated pieces of a puzzle, you begin to see a complete picture of the customer, not as some static persona on a PDF, but as something that evolves in real time. Take a customer, let's call her Emily. Instead of looking at a slide created 6 months ago, you now see her behavior emerging continuously. You see late-night browsing patterns, frequent engagement with personalized recommendations. You see the friction too, abandoned carts at checkout, or slow experiences on the mobile app. You see her preferences, fast shipping, specific product categories, how her decisions are actually made. And you see sentiment captured across all her feedback and interactions over time. All of this comes together to become one living model. And that model, it's always updating. Now, here's where it gets really powerful. Because once you understand behavior at that level, you can actually start to simulate outcomes. You can ask, what happens if we simplify the checkout? What happens if we improve mobile performance? What happens if we personalize things differently? Instead of just guessing, you're running scenarios. You evaluate patterns, you project the likely outcomes. Things like adoption rates, conversion changes, and the impact on customer satisfaction. Now, your decisions are no longer based on someone's opinion in a meeting room. They are based on informed prediction. And I'm telling you, that changes everything. Because instead of crossing your fingers and waiting for results after a launch, you can evaluate the impact before you even commit to building it. This is the full flow right here. Signals become intelligence. Intelligence becomes prediction. And prediction drives smarter decisions, much earlier, right when it matters most. Seriously.
The reason why I played in between is that we really wanted to focus on the Emily example, where it really forces us to think beyond the traditional process.
Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, we all know personas are static. We write personas, we define personas, and then they just stay there for ages. But then real customers are not. Their behaviors evolve, their preferences evolve, and their needs evolve.
That means that our understanding about the customer needs to evolve too.
And once we start understanding the customer, the prediction becomes possible.
And not prediction with certainty.
And it's really important because we are not really aiming at removing uncertainty. It's not really possible, but we are trying to minimize that uncertainty.
And when I think about practical examples of it, we see it everywhere. We have recommendation engines, we have dynamic pricing, we have AI copilots.
We all know these are all AI systems that really helps us anticipate what happens next.
And that is where AI can actually help us create more value. Not replacing human judgment, but strengthening human judgment.
And that helps leaders to make better decisions over and over again.
Because over time, those small improvements are compounded into one big change on the outcomes.
Evaluate an idea before committing the time and resources to build it. What if you could estimate how customers might respond, how adoption might evolve, what outcomes are actually likely? I'm not talking about absolute certainty here, but an informed perspective. This is exactly where anticipation comes in. Instead of just waiting around for results after a release, teams begin to understand the impact so much earlier. And that completely changes what gets prioritized. Because now, decisions are shaped by likely outcomes, rather than just technical feasibility or manager's opinion. Which ultimately means fewer low-impact investments and a much, much better use of everyone's effort. This right here is where agility evolves. Think about it. Traditional agility is reactive. It just responds to change as it happens. But
So one thing and one phrase that I've always liked is learning earlier.
It's because the timing is very important.
If we discover something after the launch, our options are very limited.
Whereas if we discover something prior to the investment, we have way larger opportunities.
And that's really the value of anticipation. It's not certainty, it's flexibility.
it's entirely different. Predictive agility is anticipatory. It absolutely doesn't wait for outcomes. It actively seeks out signals earlier. It doesn't optimize for sheer activity. It optimizes for actual impact. And when this shift really takes hold in a company, effort becomes incredibly focused. Decisions become clearer, outcomes become way more consistent. All because the organization is no longer asking, what can we build? It's finally asking, what will actually make a difference? Over time,
And we have been hearing and talking about agility over years now, but then it's really interesting to see how our understanding about agility changed over years.
So originally, agility was all about responding to change fast.
It's still important. We still need to respond.
But the question that we're asking today is changing. Can we really recognize the change before we are forced to react to it?
And that is where predictive agility comes into picture and anticipation becomes possible.
interesting starts to happen. Effort and impact begin to decouple. In traditional models, we all know that putting in more effort doesn't guarantee more value, right? But when your selection process improves, you start to achieve much greater outcomes, all with better focused investment. And that's not because you're building less. It's because you're finally building what matters. And that's exactly where product organizations start to operate differently. You get less noise, more clarity, and significantly more value per decision. So the question is,
one thing that I've learned is that value doesn't always come from effort alone.
And we have seen that teams deliver incredibly high value in a very less amount of time.
We have all seen the teams working incredibly hard on something that really does not create value.
Whereas very small investments do create a larger amount of impact.
Which tells us something very important. Better choices can make more impact than more effort.
And that's what prioritization is all about.
speed is already there. We've got that down. The real question is, how do we make better decisions earlier? Because every single outcome is shaped long before development even begins. It's shaped in the choices we make, the signals we use, the assumptions we carry around. The organizations that move forward are going to be the ones that improve that exact moment, the ones that connect customer reality to every single decision they make, and the ones that consistently invest in what truly matters. Because the future of product development, it's not about reacting faster, it's about anticipating smarter and turning that anticipation into meaningful impact.
As we have been
Product teams today are incredibly fast.
As we have been talking over last 2 days about agility in all the sessions, something that comes to my mind is most of us are focused on agile towards productivity.
So if there's one idea we would want to leave you with today, is that future isn't simply about delivering faster.
It's choosing better, understanding earlier, and making greater impacts.
Thank you so much for spending one of the last parts of the conferences with us. And we really apologize for the technical issues that we've been having. Obviously, again, everything was working perfectly right before the session.
Yeah, happens. Demos are always harder. But that's
Thank
okay.
you.
Thanks for all your time, and I hope
Thank you
have
so much. Let's give a huge round of applause to Ms. Natalia and Sandhya. I request Mr. Vijay and Suresh to please come on stage. Natalia, so I request Mr. Vijay and Suresh to please come on stage and felicitate our speakers. You are really good speakers, ma'am. Thank you. Come on, guys. How was the session? Come on, everybody, once again. Thank you so much, Dr. Natalia and Sandhya, for this great presentation and so much information.